Welcome, future masters. Make sure you like the video. It's going to be a fun game. Well, it was fun for me. I don't know about him, but pretty interesting, quickie game in 3 minutes. Hit a d4. So he likes to play symmetrical, and I'm good with that. So, bishop d3, knight f6, knight d2, bishop e7, bishop d6 is a little bit better, but that's a good move. f4, castle your king, get your king safe. Great move. See, that's the thing. You got to compliment your opponent when he makes a great move, and castling was a great move. All right, now what's he trying to do to me? That's what my dad would say. He's trying to play c5 to c4, making my bishop run away. So I want my bishop, if it gets attacked, to go to c2. So make space for the bishop. That's knight c6 is where that knight belongs. That's a good move. Computer doesn't think this is that great, but White's doing fantastic right here. Just watch and learn. Time to castle, baby. So, now he's going to play bishop b7 and get on the long diagonal, which is a very smart move. White has only one plan that really combats that, and that is queen f3. The computer doesn't like it, but trust me, queen f3 is the over a century old idea in this opening. So this is one of those things where the computer thinks there's something better, beats the heck out of me. But this is just proven to be as reliable as the sunrise in the east. G4 followed by H4 and G5, or G5 and whatever. So he trades knights. It's not the greatest plan in town. But if he doesn't take the knight, he has troubles. If he plays H6, G5 is coming, or H4 and then G5 is coming. And it'll be ugly. So, there's ugliness on the horizon if he doesn't trade knights. But now his position is fairly passive. Unless he wants to sacrifice a pawn. But it's not really a sacrifice. It's just a gift because he gets nothing for it. Bam. Take with a knight. Because you want to recapture with the bishop to challenge his long square diagonal bishop. You don't want to take with the bishop, pawn takes bishop, and then knight takes, and then that knight is pinned by that bishop to your queen. So the knight captures it first. This way, if he wants to exchange all the pieces and leave your queen on e4, I'm all for it. Which is exactly what he did. And then he did that. Now, objectively speaking, it's okay. I did it. I took with the e pawn. I could have taken with the c pawn, and then played, bishop c3. Tomato. I said I'll just go with this. This guy can't really be threatening me with anything. I've got a queenside pawn majority. Bishop d2 is going to be rock solid. He can spend his life trying to mess with c3 if he wants, but that's his problem, not mine. So, actually, maybe I could have done. Maybe I should have played rook f3 and rook h3. I didn't do that, but I'm good. So here, I don't want to trade queens unnecessarily. So I said, if you want to put a rook on e4, I'll take it. He decided that wasn't what he wanted to do. So now I decided I'm going to go and do this stuff myself. Probably should have played rook f3 again, threatening rook h3. Make him take me. Well, whatever. Or I could have gone back to b1 or whatever. But I'm an easy pawn up. No big deal. In a game in 3 minutes, he's going to be in defensive troubles. Not today, bud. So you want to go and play with this idea of playing b4. I'll just, take and liquidate. Or let him take it. He could play b4, a takes b, and if he takes b takes c, I hit him with bishop takes c3, and then he's going to be like, uh-oh. So I was threatening with king g3, I was threatening to play h4. So he had to play g5, making his tall pawn even taller. And so now it was like, well, would you like to try and advance your f pawn? It's going to be difficult. So then I had another idea here, b4. The computer doesn't think it's that great of a move, but it's kind of good. Because I get this kind of fortress setup that he can't really do much about. Because I have one weakness, which is the a pawn. But I have one rook guarding it already, with the bishop going to c1 will guard it as well. His bishop can never attack the a3 pawn. So we're good there. Though, so this was to prevent the rook from getting to the c file. I would have gone there anyway. But, whatever. I did not expect him to play f5. I didn't think he had anything good that could happen. And objectively speaking, if I wanted to spend time in a real tournament game, probably the move to play would be worthy of consideration would be g takes f5. I don't know. I didn't look at the computer to see what it thinks of that move. Although I thought my move was pretty good. I just said, well, I'll just en passant this guy. So, e takes f6, en passant. So how are you going to play this? Bishop. It doesn't look too great to me. He did the bishop move. I instantly jumped on him. And I had an idea that he's got a problem here, that I've got a temporary pin on this bishop. And it's going to get better as I play this crushing type move. It's not crushing by itself, but it's just so great. It looks terrible. To the chess eye, it's terrible. But it has this long-term Damocles effect. It's the Sword of Damocles, d5. Because at the correct moment, like I'm right now threatening to play d5, and that wins an exchange at the very least. Because his rook is guarded by the king only, but it's double attacked with an X-ray on the f-file by both of my rooks. So if I play d5, he can't take, well, sorry, I'm not threatening to play d5 at this moment because he can take the pawn. Because he has 3 defenders of the bishop, which is fine. But if he moves his rook off of the 3rd rank, then I'm threatening to play d5. Because he'd run into pawn takes pawn, then he'd lose a bishop. To rook takes, bishop check, rook takes, rook takes. So d5 is a Sword of Damocles type threat, which is freaking killer. So he defends it differently, which retrospectively I don't think that was the right move. I think he should keep the rook on the 3rd rank. That's his most reliable defense. But I still get the same idea that I have, which is maneuvering my king behind the rooks to go to b3 and then defeat him with my king on the queen side. So I had this idea, but this is one of those things that in a very short time period game, the inferior endgame player is going to make his inferior endgame skill noticed. Typical cheap shot threat. Worthless. So what I'm doing here is creating this awesome fortress for my king to go down. And this is one of my dad's old, it's really funny, it's a rule that he didn't think of as a rule. You know, it was more of a taunt. And his taunt is, hey, you have a dark square bishop. I'm just going to move on the light squares. It's a terrific rule. So now he threatens my pawn, and that play this little jewel. Dink. Now you get a fortress. Notice how the rooks guard c2 and c3. The bishop guards c1. He could put a rook on the c file and it doesn't do anything. Except getting, you know, when my king is concerned. It really doesn't do anything. So what we're going to do now is that he's almost in Zugzwang at this moment. He's got problems. Like, one of the problems he has is that if he plays h5, I would just play h3. If he takes, I take back. And if he locks the pawn structure, that's fine. My king has free reign on the light squares to go to d3, number 1. All right, so his king does not have moves like, for example, he cannot play king g7. Because if he plays king g7, we hammer him with rook takes bishop. Rook takes rook, d5. It's the Sword of Damocles. This d-pawn, the Sword of Damocles, is threatening to fall on him. And it's a horrible position to be in a short time period game. Because you're constantly having to look above you and see if the sword is about to break, if the string is about to break, and let the sword fall on your head. So that's the thing that's getting him right now. So he makes, you know, a good solid move. He gets back on the c file, right? Well, I'm executing my plan of I'm going to go king to d3, and then maybe king to e4, or, you know, if he lets me, king c2, king b3. If my king gets to b3, I can use the king to assist the queenside pawn majority. So he makes a mistake. He didn't realize. He put his rook on f7 and then correctly had his rook also on c7. Although, you know, I thought the 6th rank was better. He needs his rook on the 6th rank or the 7th rank to defend against the threats on the f file combined with d5. As soon as his rook goes anywhere but c7, or, you know, a 7th rank square or a 6th rank square, d5 is the crusher. But in a short time period game, you know, it's like you're twisting it's like you take a rubber band and you start twisting it. You know, put rubber band on a pencil and then take a pencil and just on the other end, and you just start twisting this. Eventually, you just keep twisting, that rubber band will break. And that's what got him, is that he moved off of the defensive ranks that he had to have his rook on. And as soon as he did it, I popped him. d5. Crunch. This is the Sword of Damocles. But this is not common. He plays an interesting move. I looked at this move as well. I was prepared for this move when I played d5. I go, well, if he goes there, d5, rook f4. I play rook takes. Just watch the bar. Rook takes. He plays pawn takes, the only move. I play not rook takes pawn, but hit him with the in-between move. D takes e6, threatening his rook. That wins another pawn. Or actually, well, it actually does win another pawn. He's going to get it back, but that doesn't matter because I'm going to take the f pawn. What's going to happen is I'm going to use this sequence to, okay, let me tell you what I'm going to do. Okay, I played d5. He played the rook up. I took the rook. He took it back. What I'm going to do now with the d takes e6 in between move is I'm going to liquidate the material and transform this advantageous rook and bishop endgame into a king and pawn endgame, which, as you all know, I'm a master and then some at king and pawn endgames. So it's a fairly easy win, actually. So he did that. I hammered him with bishop takes bishop. Don't be stupid. You got to defend your stuff. He takes it. He's forced. Rook takes f4. King takes pawn. Well, that's not really the move you want to be playing there, buddy. You have 0 chance if you take the pawn. He took it. And it's 4-on-2. You have no chance. Magnus Carlsen, Garry Kasparov, and 8,000 grandmasters cannot save you at this point. So now it's 2 versus 1 on both sides of the board. Doink. Wah, wah. So he's in bad shape, baby. So he is in very bad shape. Bum, bum, bum. I should have played H4 earlier, actually. Some good questions. Look at this again. Yeah, this is just absolutely winning. The machine is showing you everything I'm doing here is just absolutely winning. It's a forced win. Because now we're going to trade a pawn and use it as a decoy. King E3. So he takes it, but we're going to take this pawn, and then those of you who've been around my videos before know where my king is going. Do you know where my king is headed? If you do, you're going to know the reason why am I going to go to that square. For those of you who may not know this, I'm going to teach you about the square in this endgame here. The square I'm headed to is A7. And A7 is the square that I call the shepherd square. The shepherd square is a square on either side of a passed pawn. So the passed pawn I'm looking at is the pawn on the B file, where my king is B4. So the thing is, the shepherd square, when in king versus king, as soon as my king is on A7, I will play at some point B6, B7, and B8 queen, and no king can stop that. So the shepherd square is an ultimate square. And the reason I give it that name is it's very important. It shepherds the sheep, which is the pawn, to the queening square, the safety zone. So that is the key. So he goes here, check, and it's game over. I think he resigned. He resigned here because he saw that king C7, king A7. So let's do king C7. This is the game could have continued, and the shepherd square is here. King A7. I've got him. You know, their next 3 moves, no matter what he plays, are B6, B7, and B8 queen. Don't care what he does. Where his king goes, doesn't matter to me. I'm on the shepherd square. This is an invincible position. So that was a very good game. Very practical, showed practical examples of, getting a good bind of a position, just understanding what's going on for, in this case, white, and just trying to sidestep mistakes. Just real simple stuff. Sometimes you win, as my dad would say, by not being fancy. I was not fancy, except for, now maybe you could say my D5 Sword of Damocles was a fancy move that I had been planning for that guy. So, everything else I did was pretty straightforward. Don't be fancy. Make your positional moves like I did. I set up the D5 when, bishop to C3 was a terrific move. As you saw, let's go back to bishop C3. That was a terrific move. Here, this is not the obvious player's move. I don't know. You'd probably see some players, if you had this position, you'd probably start seeing players. People would play this move. The moves that people would play here are going to be like rook D3 or bishop C3 or bishop to E3. So the bishop C3 is not really as mysterious because the bishop is threatening the pawn. The mystery of the move, and that's one of the things that maybe that was the deal, is that I didn't realize it. When I looked at this position, I saw bishop C3 as the move because of the bishop on the diagonal. That this was giving me a tactically nasty combo if he doesn't pay attention. Maybe he didn't see that. Maybe he just saw that bishop attacked pawn, bishop defended pawn. You know, I don't know what he's, I don't know him. I didn't talk to him. So I don't know what he saw. For sure he saw bishop defended pawn, but he seemed as if he knew that d5 was a possibility, because he played bishop to rook to b7, which was a good move, because now he's threatening to move the bishop. Like bishop to g7 is a possibility, because I can't play d5. Now, if he does it, I'm going to exchange rooks and just, his king will be on f7. I'll go king f3, followed by king e4, and he's decisively losing. Already, he's decisively losing. But I have to decide how I'm going to try and finish him off, because my bishop is also a tall pawn in the endgame. I don't have any real threats with that bishop. I can't play d5. I have to go like bishop to d2, bishop to e3, and then play d5, and try to penetrate with the king. But the bishop to c3 was a move that had lasting effects that I saw that, I don't know if he saw it or not. He could have seen it. It looked like he saw it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, because you could see that rook b7 and the moves he played are good. That rook b7 was a good move to play rook c7. That's good. And I do this, and everything that he's doing is good. But if you're not seeing d5, man, it's a sword of Damocles. And it looked like he was seeing it, but like I said, I had realized I could do this backyard maneuvering on the light squares and put my king anywhere I want to, either d3 or b3, whichever he lets me do. If I go to d3, I'm going to get to e4. If he lets me go to b3, he's got other troubles. So he's going to run out of moves before he's going to have to make a move that commits him to an exchange that is probably going to make his endgame worse. So that's the thing about this game that was really good. Sidestep mistakes. I saw the mistakes that were possible for white, easily sidestepped them, and just executed my plan. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, learned something from it. I thought it was a pretty good lesson. That's why I put it out here. So make sure you like the video, tell your friends, and it's 23 minutes. See you later.